Hi friends, it's my turn to share. If you don't know who I am, my name is Fran. Some people know me as Francel, some people know me as Francel. I guess it depends on where you're at. Um, I am wife of Brian, and he shared a couple weeks ago, so it's my turn. We have two beautiful children, Luna and Levi, and we currently live in Arizona. And we serve at our local church part-time, and we have our full-time jobs during the week. So like I said, I'm a mom, and as women we've been taught to put our kids first. We've been taught to put our husbands first, and take care of our household before ourselves. And in doing that, as I do that, I've found myself to be more recluse. um, when I was 13 years old, my dad passed away, and at the same time, at that time, my sister was only 4, and we're 9 years apart, right? So my mom had to pick up the pieces, and I had to help her do it. And so in doing that, I had to learn to be more independent. I had to be strong. I had to help my mom be a provider, and I had to work through things by myself, and it was hard. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is something that God is still bringing me through, and it is about vulnerability. And I find it hard to be vulnerable, honestly. Like, I don't know about you, but being vulnerable is just it's kind of hard for me. It's not that I don't want to be, and I find that when that I'm vulnerable less with the people that I love, the people that care about me. And it's like I said, it's not that I want to be, that I don't want to be vulnerable, but I just find it really hard. And I guess it's just because I've been disappointed a lot as I grew older, and so I just put a bunch of walls to protect myself. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Anyway, the word vulnerable, it means to be in a state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed. And, not that Christ himself would ever give us harm. It's not that. But I wanted to unpack this idea that it's okay to be vulnerable so that God can work through us. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9 and 10, it says, "But he said this to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." Now, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in Christ, God is able to work in our hearts and in our minds for his glory. Like it says in the verse, when we are weak, he is made strong. It creates a bond between us and God, and we can experience the fullness of a loving relationship. Now, when Jesus was here on earth, he sought people who had weaknesses so that he could make them whole. Like, for example, there was Zacchaeus. He was short. People hated him because he was a tax collector. He had a bad rep, obviously. He was yearning to see Jesus because he had a weakness or suffering. There's Jairus and his daughter, a local synagogue official. He went to Jesus begging Jesus to heal his daughter because she was sick. And then there was the centurion. He was a man of power, like it says in the Bible verses. He had made himself vulnerable by asking for healing in that moment. Now, he could have sent someone else, but he didn't. He went to Jesus by himself, and he asked. And he put himself in a place of vulnerability to do that. Now, these people are people of importance. They were officials. They worked themselves into authoritative positions with power, and yet they had weaknesses and were suffering. I truly relate to this. It is a hard thing to admit that I did the same thing as them. I'm not like some big official, clearly. But I worked myself into a place where I had to be strong, I had to be independent, I had to do whatever that was necessary at that time. I'm talking about, then. But also now, I busy myself in order to not bring attention to my weakness and sufferings. And that's not right. God saw their weaknesses. They got their need for God, and God saw that. And they made themselves vulnerable by seeking God. And we should do the same. Zacchaeus, he climbed the tree in order to get closer to God, in order to get closer to Jesus. Jairus and the centurion, they potentially made a fool out of themselves in front of everyone by asking for help. Like, just put yourself in their shoes for a minute. I would be so scared to do that. Now, y'all, we have got to be honest. We've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to be honest with God. And when we are honest about our mistakes, our feelings, and we allow ourselves to receive what God has for us. Now, God has shown me in my life how important it is to acknowledge our suffering. Vulnerability is taking the risk to expose yourself emotionally. It is how we came into this world. It is how we draw closer to God. Avoiding physical pain, though, is a good thing, right? Who wants to get hurt? If you're exercising, though, that's a completely different story. But avoiding emotional pain, that's not right. That's not good. That's not good for you. It's not good for your soul. Not good for your mind. But honestly, for me, the idea of giving someone my burden, giving someone my emotional pain, it just makes me feel like I'm inconveniencing that person. But God says in Psalms 55, verse 22, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. Our vulnerability in our suffering is not a bad thing. It is the best path to finding a clear picture of who God is. So, Paul is telling us in 2 Corinthians, like we read earlier, that his power is made perfect in our weaknesses. So if we continue to be strong, to be independent, to just do things our way, there is no way for God to give us the things that he has for us. So, I'm not saying that being strong and independent is a bad thing, because you cannot build a life around the things that only we can do. That's just not how it works, because there are things that only God can do. So when we give it to God, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable so that God can work through us, it opens doors to many more possibilities that God has for us. The way that we reach people, when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we reach a different demographic of people, and in every season of our lives. So I just wanted to encourage you guys, as I go through this in life, as God continues to work in my heart about the situation, I encourage you to do the same, to allow yourself to be vulnerable for Christ.